Bison continue to roll.
And Lance is going to keep it. He's got room to the outside, and Trey Lance has another rushing touchdown.
The number 1 team in the country proved they are number 1 in the state, taking care of the Fighting Hawks.
Zimmerman running out of time, and he will go down.
Behind another brilliant performance from quarterback Trey Lance.
Lance faked the run and then threw it out to the end zone. Ben Ellison wide open, touchdown.
Now, the Bison hit the road to the East Coast. Delaware came to Fargo 1 season ago.
Pressure coming, Kehoe steps out of it for a moment and then stumbles down at midfield.
And Code Green made their presence known.
Kehoe drops it off and it's intercepted by Jabril Cox. He's going to take it back for his second touchdown in 2 weeks.
With the Bison making quick work of the Blue Hens. It's NDSU's first game in the first state, and it starts right now.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Hello and welcome into the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. Alex Egan alongside Beth Hool. We are missing Kyle Emanuel, our third member. He would normally be here, but he's unavailable
I would
this
be talking
weekend.
like
Right?
this.
Yeah, we'll be looking up at him. He is unavailable this weekend, but never fear. We have football on the horizon.
And he will be back.
He will be
He
back,
is here the rest of the season, so don't worry.
Yeah, we gave him the boot. We thought, you know what, Kyle? That's enough from you.
Showed us up a little bit too much.
North Dakota State at Delaware today. First true road game for the Bison this season. And obviously, it comes at a good time for the Bison, this non-conference schedule. Just the one road game, but this is a good test for this Bison team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to get on the road, take a look at things. You know, head coach Matt Entz talked a lot this week about how valuable road games are for football teams, especially with so many young guys. They kind of get to really bond, get to know each other a little bit. He talked about the opportunity to get to know some different guys' stories and kind of meet some different people. So it's a valuable experience for a lot of guys. And I'm sure, you know, redshirt freshman quarterback Trey Lance will tell you that these road trips are super valuable because he had the opportunity to go on some last year, and I'm sure that's softening the blow a little bit of all of the different variables that he's going to take in today.
Not only did he go on these road trips, he roomed with quarterback Easton Stick, who obviously that's a good
yeah, they
guy
set those up. You don't get to pick your roommate on road trips. Yeah, they set those things up to really make sure that they maximize the opportunities here. The only difference in this road trip is they are moving that time schedule up because it's an early morning here for football.
Boy, still before noon here in Fargo.
It's brunch with the Bison. Not quite breakfast with the Bison, but brunch.
Let's go out to the East Coast where it is afternoon now, and our guys standing by. Ryan Gellner, Brian Shawn, and Lee Timmerman, they will be on the call today. Hello, guys. Happy Football Saturday to you.
Yeah, guys, it is officially afternoon here in Delaware, where the talk here has been about the Bison quarterback. Trey Lance is kind of the buzz around here. Everybody wants to see if he is the real deal. And, Brian, when you come into this football game, Delaware comes in as a team that, well, has a bad taste in their mouth from last year. And then they see all these new names on the North Dakota State roster, but they will admit North Dakota State sure looks good on film. Well, Delaware looks pretty good as well.
Yeah, they have looked pretty good. The problem with Delaware is they've looked really good in the second halves of their game, and they've gotten off to really slow starts in their first two first halves of their first two games. And again, remember last year, North Dakota State jumped all over them right away, and it was 28-0 after the first quarter. And the big conversation here all week amongst the coaches and the players is we have to get off to a faster start if we want to stay in this game.
Yeah, and turnovers have been a problem, as Brian alluded to, for Delaware this year, especially in the first half.
Yeah, Matt Kehoe threw 3 interceptions, dug himself a huge hole, and then helped dig the team out where they won in triple overtime. So there was some excitement, partially because he created it. But the thing that I think of when I see this Delaware team, the Bison, you know, through Butler and then through UND, and now the caliber of competition through the non-conference games continues to step up. This will be the best offensive line the Bison have seen this year, and it'll be the best defensive line that the Bison will see this year. And, of course, that's the foundation of teams wanting to stay in games and potentially win it.
It'll be a great measuring stick for North Dakota State and a great measuring stick for Delaware as well. We expect, 80s, somewhere around there. It feels really good right now, a little bit of a light breeze. Although, guys, I think it's fair to say it's quite humid here. And just to give you a feel for where we're at, we're 36 miles from Philadelphia, 53 miles from Baltimore, 87 miles from the nation's capital, and 117 miles from New York City. So if you're looking for recruits, this is maybe not a football hotbed, but there is a huge population amongst a lot of people for Delaware to be able to choose from, Brian.
Danny Rocco said in his 34 years of coaching, this is the first time that he's brought recruits to campus and has not had to fly one of them in. He didn't have to fly any recruits in this last year because they're all drive trips because, again, you talked about the hotbed. That makes it a lot easier, I think, to try to get recruits in here. And I think he's very excited about the young players he has playing. They're not ready yet, but by next year or the year after, this Blue Hen team is going to be one to deal with, very formidable.
The Blue Hens, too, Ryan, I'll say they've had some FBS bounce backs. They're Delaware kids that went somewhere else. We'll see a running back who went to Penn State type of thing. And then when that didn't quite work out, now they're coming home. They are very, and Delaware's not a big state, but they have a lot of Delaware kids on the roster, which, of course, if you're Coach Rocco, you want local kids.
And you talk about Delaware going through a transition. You've heard probably plenty about this place right here going through transition as well, and we'll talk about that during the broadcast. The playing surface, though, is phenomenal. The field is only 2 years old, and it looks great. The sight lines are great. We'll see how many fans fill this place, but they're under renovation. They expect, or they can hold somewhere around 17. I don't know if we'll get there today. The early sites don't make it look like we're going to get to 17, but there's some atmosphere at least.
Yeah, and I'll be excited when the press box is done, too. Well, they've done a nice job piecing this thing together, but it's been an interesting experience trying to get everything set for this press box, because the press box is eventually going to be up there when they're building a new $60 million Whitney Center, which is going to be a fantastic facility. But they're trying to play catch up here with all these facilities, and they're investing a lot of money here into the infrastructure on campus. So I think Delaware is on its way up. They want to get this program back to where it was back in 2010, playing for a national title.
And it is a top 20 matchup. It's a great measuring stick for both teams to see where they are at in the national landscape. It's great for Delaware because they're ready for CAA play. It's just as great for North Dakota State because this gets them even more closer and ready for their conference play as well.
It does, and it's one of the things that a lot of the FCS teams have tried to do. Everybody tries to get the big score from the FBS. Well, we know the Bison have had trouble trying to get an FBS game. They'll have one next year, but there was the home and home with Eastern Washington, and so this is the return game from Delaware. I like the fact that Missouri Valley, the CAA, two really good FCS conferences, are going, hey, it's hard to find money games. Let's make our own money games, play a home and home. It works for everybody, and here's the return trip from the game we saw in Fargo last year.
Yeah, and it turned out to be a great matchup for North Dakota State last year, and we'll talk about that plenty during the pregame show. Obviously, the fast start. If you can duplicate that somehow for North Dakota State, you would take that every single time to be up 14 points. By the time that Delaware takes their second snap of the football game, that's what happened last year.
Matt Kehoe, don't throw it to Jabril Cox's side. Just don't do that.
Yeah, because that turned ugly last year. Although that's a key for North Dakota State. Kehoe has made mistakes. Lee and I, we talked about that, but Brian, North Dakota State really wants to see if they can force mistakes out of this kid.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the challenge. 3 first-half interceptions and 5 second-half touchdown passes, so there's been a little uneven. But there's been challenges for him. He's on his 4th different quarterback coach, and he's learning his 3rd new offense. They have a new offensive coordinator here in Jared Ambrose, who spent the last 10 years at Towson. So that is the challenge, I think, as they still try to bring this whole thing together. This guy's still trying to learn the terminology, as is the entire offense.
Should be a fun football game, guys. We've got plenty of more pregame show. But for now, we'll wrap it up from the sideline at Delaware, where we're getting ready for football. Back to our Fargo studios.
All right, thank you very much, guys.
Obviously, a lot to talk about in this matchup. You can say whatever you want about Delaware, and they got bounced from. CAA teams really didn't do well in the playoffs last year at all. But Delaware made it to the playoffs last year for the first time since 2010. They're on the rise. All of those things, and I think it's really easy to kind of overlook some of these non-conference games and kind of think nothing of them. But there's a lot to talk about here, and I think Delaware, they're absolutely on the rise.
This is kind of a sneaky Delaware team too, because they were a playoff team a year ago, so that automatically gets you kind of in that top 25 ranking, and then they haven't lost to kind of move out of that ranking yet.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a sneaky top 25 Delaware team, in that a lot of people may not think that they're a top 25 team, but they've earned it from being in the playoff field last year.
And with plenty of returners in tow, including a starting quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get into this Bison offense and the tight ends.
I love this Bison offense this year. I thought I loved last year's Bison offense.
Oh, it was dynamic.
But I am enjoying Tyler Roll's spin on this and getting to see what his additions to it are as an offensive coordinator. And obviously a big part of that comes in seeing a little bit more of the crew chiefs. The tight ends are coming up with a dynamic performance through these first 2 games. They have 5 of the 6 touchdown receptions on the season so far. And, you know, Matt Entz joked about it this week. Well, and last week we joked about it with him that, you know, they're teasing Tyler Roll in the football office, that it's very clear that the group that he coaches, those tight ends, those fullbacks, are all of a sudden showing up on the stat sheet a lot more and a lot quicker than they have in years past.
And to that point, while it is kind of funny that the tight ends are getting some love after, you know, Tyler Roll takes over as the OC, in years past, Trey Lance, well, Easton Stick didn't exactly have 3 6'5" plus targets that could catch.
Yeah, this speaks to the recruiting that NDSU has been doing the last couple of years to really recruit dynamic athletes at that tight end fullback position, and guys that are capable of catching the ball just as much as blocking and laying some hits on people as well. So this is a dynamic group that's been recruited, has been groomed, has come up in this program, and now they've got numbers again. You think back to, you know, the Luke Albers years and some of those. They had a couple of numbers. Those guys got a lot of pass receptions, got some touchdown receptions from Carson Wentz, and so we're just kind of seeing a rejuvenation of that. I think it's easy to kind of laugh about it with it being Tyler Roll as the OC. But it's great to see, and I think more important than anything, the most valuable part of this is the fact that they're opening the game up and forcing. It's the same thing as that trick play, you know, going for
pass,
2. Going for going for 2 against Butler. You have to put that stuff on film because then teams have to prepare for it. Every team the rest of the year now can't just focus on Phoenix Sproles. They can't just focus on the wide receivers or, you know, the Bison with that wheel route or any of those classic Bison football traits. They now have to seriously consider that tight end. And, you know, Matt Entz even said that one of his favorite parts about bringing in the tight ends is that they are capable. That's something that he says from his time on the defensive side of the ball just causes all sorts of problems.
It is so hard to defend. All right, well, we've got plenty more to come here on.
I'm so excited about this. Can we do like a whole hour on how awesome the tight ends are in this whole situation?
All tight ends all the time.
Okay,
we're
shut
gonna
me
move
up.
on.
Let's go.
We'll do some other stuff. We'll talk about Delaware as well. That's still plenty of stuff to come here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Here is a look at the construction that the guys were talking about there. A new press box going into Delaware Stadium. So that's the look at it from the field. The temporary press box is on the opposite side. They had something like 15 or 16,000 people at their first game there, and that was against Delaware State. That's where the guys will be calling the game from over there.
And the coaches.
Temporary. Yeah, the coaches' boxes, they're all over there. So it'll look a little funky on TV with the logo on the other side. But that's what it'll look like there at Delaware Stadium. The Bison obviously getting into town, rolling in yesterday. They flew in and then getting to the stadium today. I find it interesting that they've done the same thing, and Matt Entz kept it this way too. They don't actually go to the stadium like a lot of teams do the day before.
No. So NDSU stopped going to the field the day before for a walkthrough. During Chris Kleiman's time, a player had sustained an injury during that walkthrough. Right? Yeah. Hurt his knee, and so Chris Kleiman made the decision that they would no longer go to the stadiums. Athletes aren't superstitious or anything, but it's worked out because as we talked about this week, throughout the week in our coverage of Bison football, NDSU has 3 losses on the road since 2011. I think the system's working out okay for them.
Not bad when you've only dropped 3 of the 31, 34 games that they've had. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I don't know the math.
Let's learn a little bit more about the Delaware Blue Hens, and we'll catch up with a former Minnesota Viking that's actually going to be on a TV call on a different channel.
See, just because we don't have Kyle doesn't mean we don't have former NFL.
We got former NFL players all day. I have no idea what I'm saying.
Every week.
Yes, Ryan Gellner standing by with Quadri Ishmael. Ryan?
Yeah, guys, the missile, as he was called, Quadri Ishmael, of course, was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings second round back in 1991. You're back into North Dakota right now as far as the broadcast is concerned. A little kind of like home for you.
It feels like home. Every time I turn on the television and watch North Dakota State play, You know, you could see where from a crowd aspect of things and just the way they embrace football out there, it has a community feel to it, and it was much like when I was with the Minnesota Vikings.
You have now gotten into the broadcast life and have seen Delaware play quite a few times. You are calling the game today for the local NBC stations here. Tell us a little bit about this Delaware team. North Dakota State beat up on them last year, scored early. Pat Kehoe had some issues there. But Delaware is a team that's very hungry for North Dakota State.
Yeah, they are. I think this is a ball club under Coach Rocco that has steadily improved year in and year out. They're a team with a ton of tradition as far as winning is concerned, but they kind of slipped a little bit. And I think he's bringing back that tradition of winning and the expectation of making it into the playoffs. They have a new look offense that I think has really served their personnel well, and I think it's about, you know, whether or not that they can get off to a fast start against a North Dakota State team that extremely well coached, executes to perfection week in and week out, and they like to play fast. I think they're trying to keep this game a close game and see how it ends up in the fourth quarter.
Delaware prides itself, like North Dakota State does, with that big offensive line. A veteran crew for Delaware, and it'll test North Dakota State today.
Well, I think what they are trying to do is keep their quarterback upright and at the same time allow him to go through his progressions with that spread offense. But then at the same time, yeah, they have a stable of backs that they like to use, and they like to get behind that big offensive line. You're talking about some 300-pounders, and again, it's about physical, yet at the same time making sure the playmakers get the ball into their hands and try to make some big plays.
Thank you for doing this, and have a wonderful call today. Guys, a Super Bowl champion as well. Always a special season for you, that New York Giants team that, well, a Super Bowl champion, let's just say that.
Well, I will tell you, there are more New York Giant fans that get disappointed when they hear that I played for the world champion Baltimore Ravens, and we whooped up on them 34-7, and everybody's like, oh my God, my Giants. I'm like, listen, you guys got enough Super Bowls. We had to go ahead and just, you know, take one from you.
Hey, people are excited about the Vikings this year. It should be a fun season through the Dakotas into Minnesota. I appreciate it today, and have a wonderful call.
Thank you so much.
Back to you guys.
Yeah, cool to see the missile out there. You know,
That's a lot of
Viking. I
fun.
think a lot of Vikings fans remember his time in Minnesota, drafted by Minnesota. All right, so we turn our attention to Delaware here, and Danny Rocco. Danny Rocco spoke this week at his press conference, and Danny Rocco had some very interesting things to say.
Okay, here's my thing. Before we get into it and hear from Danny Rocco, I don't know, call it trust issues. I don't know, but there's something about the way he says this stuff, and I've battled back and forth all week long with this. Is this Danny Rocco trying to get Delaware ready to suffer another demoralizing loss to the Bison, or is he trying to butter up NDSU and let them think kind of that, oh shucks, we're just Delaware.
Reverse bulletin.
Yeah,
material, right?
like we're just trying to hang with the Bison. I don't know. Listen to his sound,
Yes.
and you guys make your. I've got plenty of
You be the
opinions.
judge.
Yeah, let's roll the sound.
Here it
Yeah.
is.
And I was asked a little earlier today on the CAA conference, teleconference, about, you know, with the coaching changes at North Dakota State and, you know, what have you seen and, you know, what makes them so good? And, you know, they got good players and they develop their players. The thing that makes them so good is their execution. They execute at an extraordinarily high level. And that's why they're so good. And when you have good players executing at an extraordinarily high level, you do things that are uncommon, rare, extraordinary. There's a couple teams in college football that are doing this right now. They happen to be one of them. But, you know, that world is their world. I think our world right now is focusing on our preparation and then understanding the significance of being able to execute and the importance of it.
Their world versus our world.
He used exceptional, extraordinary. We just need to realize our world.
We need to know what our lane is versus what their lane is. Their lane is winning national championships. Our lane is
Trying to make the playoffs, which, don't get me wrong, Danny Rocco went to Delaware
Very
to
smart
help
guy.
rebuild this program. He
Yes.
left Richmond, a good
had a great run at Richmond.
Absolutely. It was very successful there. And I think this move was why would you leave Richmond? Like
Right.
But he's there to build this program back to the glory that it was. They have in all 6 national championships dating back to their Division II days. They have had 1 national championship as FCS contenders. So, I mean, they've been there. He's trying to bring it back like the Bison once did, like Craig Bowles kind of spearheaded back in the day. Kind of, he did.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It
seems like he's setting them up.
Trust
for a
issue. Do you
loss.
understand my trust issues, though?
Yes, it seems like he's setting up.
We
he's
hear
saying,
so
look,
much coach speech.
Yeah, he's saying, look, this is what is realistic for us. This is what is realistic for their expectations. That's not the same thing. Their world versus our world.
Those are
That's
powerful
what he's saying.
words.
That is very powerful.
Like, are we in store for last year's, or are they going to be? I'm so interested to see this. I'm very interested to see how Kehoe ends up being. I know they're using him a little bit differently, a little bit more dynamically. Again, though, it's just the 3rd week. So just like we talked in the last segment about how the Bison are putting things on film and trying to mix things up and making things tough on teams and giving them things that they have to be aware of. Delaware's using they're using their backup quarterback as well. They're using Kehoe a little bit more in the run game. What are we going to see?
This team also is coming off of a 3 overtime game on the roads last week.
That they won.
They did win. They did win.
While that might be exhausting, that's also a huge confidence boost that you can fight something out like that and come out on top.
All right, we will step aside. We have so much more to come here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. Make sure you stay with us.
Me?
Come on. Nah.
For sure, me. Obviously, you see? You can't
Okay,
just
I
get
got a
things.
haircut recently, so I'll give it to him. He uses like this Peruvian curl oil. It's sweet. Me. It's terrible.
Me?
I'm going me. His jokes are terrible.
No, me.
For sure.
Me. I love
Yeah.
FaceTime.
Yeah, I don't
FaceTime
like
is the best form of communication.
I don't like using my phone at all.
100%.
Me, for sure.
Can't dance. Me. Nah, me. I search for music now. Hold on. I
I'll
got
give it-
SoundCloud.
I'll give it to him. I'll give it to him just because he knows more music, but I think my taste is better.
Yeah, his taste is better.
Yeah.
No. Whoa. Wait.
What?
No.
That's for
No.
sure.
No.
You got these little stubby legs.
Better at football? Obviously me. What? Come on now. Let's sing
Me,
it.
for
Jackson.
sure.
Jackson's got the little vocal.
I've got the best
like,
vocals on the TV.
He's got some, but like I'm right there. It's competition. It's really competition.
Show us
I'm trying to think of a song to sing. Oh, there used to be so much a man can tell you, so much he can say. You became. Yeah, I'm nice.
I was there when we shot that.
Did we
Obviously,
owe CL money?
I was asking the questions. I edited that, and I just now noticed Trey Fort during
He joined in.
that. No. I knew he joined in, but the rest of it, it's
Oh, he's hesitant.
yes. It was like just now. We're gonna put that one out on social media for
Hey,
him.
when your name's Jackson Brown, you better be a good singer, all right?
I
That's
love
all you gotta
those.
say.
We got a
Jackson,
lot more
yeah.
singing
Oh
coming for
my
you
goodness.
this year.
Oh, do we? Oh my goodness. Same song too, no less. It's great. All right, let's go back out to Delaware. Ryan Kellner standing by with our Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine injury report.
Yeah, guys, good afternoon. Field side with Dr. Bruce Pyatt. And Dr. Pyatt, we are outdoors today, and while it's cloudy, we're talking about something that I don't think we've talked about before, and that is some of the no glare that some of the players today, and you certainly see this at all levels, baseball, football, this is the black stuff that players will put underneath their eyes, and we wanted to find out, is it effective? So first of all, tell us about the product and generally what players use it for.
So it's been around for a long time. The initial eye black actually was they took old corks and burned them and used the black ashes of that and put that under their eyes. The whole theory is based on the color of black. So when you think about black, why are colors or objects black when they're that color? It's because it absorbs light. And so it's the maximum color that absorbs light. Everybody thought in theory that will work. If we can absorb the glare that's coming in, it's going to help an athlete to perform. So there have been many studies that look at it to see if it really does work. And to be honest with you, when you look at it, you think this is going to be one of those hocus pocus things that our guys are using. It looks cool and that type of thing. But there really is data that supports it. Around collecting glare, it's a little bit iffy as to whether or not it really does reduce the glare for the athlete, but it clearly shows that it improves their dark light contrast. So a football coming out of the sky at them, it's going to give them better contrast to pick that up easier and better. And there's multiple studies that really show that that works. Now, does that translate to better performance? Those studies aren't really there one way or another to know, but in theory, it's not going to hurt things, and it has potential to help them.
Interesting stuff. Now, some players do just the line across the eye. Some players do the entire V. Any support to more is better, or is just that single line good enough?
Well, all the studies have been done with the single line, so I can't give you data on whether or not the guys who decorate their faces have any better improvement. My guess would be no. If you just think about your line of vision can't see the side of your lip or your chin or whatever, wherever they're putting it. So it's really got to be just that part just under the eye that would have a dramatic effect.
In recent years, they've come out with the sticks where you can just stick on a little sticker underneath your eye. You told me earlier that doesn't really show up in those studies.
No, those studies show they don't work. So some people thought it would anything there, even petroleum jelly, be good enough, and that didn't work either. It seems to be that you have to have the grease from the eye black that really helps to absorb that.
You said you would put this on for us.
I never said that. I'm guarantee that. I'd put it on you if you want.
Well, we won't go that far, but yeah, once the cap comes off, guys, it just simply is some black gloss that you put underneath your eye, and according to the doc, it works. So we'll see how many players wear that today. Thank you so much, Doc.
Thank you very much.
Guys, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. Let's take a look at who is out today, and that's a list that is getting longer by the week. We're only 2 games in, and we've already got Dimitri Williams, suffered an injury last week against UND. He's out. James Hendricks had concussion symptoms. He's not going to be able to go today. Mason Hofstedt got hurt on a kickoff last week against UND, and of course, Jake Reinholz, who's been working through an injury that he suffered in week 1, will not be available today. All right, let's...
Real quick, though, on these injuries, you know, when you look at James Hendricks, you look at Dimitri and Mason, those are injuries that they're going to come back from. Those aren't season-ending injuries. They're going to be back. I think more than anything, James Hendricks is a precautionary thing this week. I think the Bison are confident that their defense can step up in his absence, not to mention that Dimitri is somebody that Coach Ench said in his press conference this week is somebody that it comes down to managing his injury better on their part. And so, again, I'm expecting that to be more of a precautionary hold on him than anything.
If this was a Valley game, might see those
I think if this
guys.
was South Dakota State, I think this was...
see him going, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into the quarterbacks that'll be playing today. Of course, we know who Pat Kehoe is. We saw him come to Fargo last year. He did not like playing in Fargo last year, but these are his stats this year. Over 65%, 66% completion. You know, that's a stat that I like to harp on, is that completion percentage.
Yes, you do.
Not a running quarterback, as running quarterbacks go.
But running more this year than he has in years past.
Which is something that the Bison, historically, if you will, under Matt Entz as a defensive coordinator and head coach, they have struggled against the running quarterback, which might be the reason why Trey Lance got the nod over Zeb Nolan, because running quarterbacks are hard to prepare for. And while Kehoe can run, he is not the runner that the guy going for the Bison today is. And well, Trey Lance has been nothing short of spectacular in his first 2 games in a Bison uniform, first 2 starts in a Bison uniform.
Yeah, and I'm just really excited to continue to see him check off some of these milestones in his starting career, getting this first true road start. Really excited to see what he's able to do, how he's able to handle those things. And really, they said the big challenge for him moving forward is continuing to recognize things at the line of scrimmage. And I think he's going to be challenged in that a little bit today. And I'm just really eager to see what he's capable of doing.
6 passing touchdowns, 5 of those to the tight ends, like you mentioned.
Yep.
0 interceptions, which is phenomenal for a young quarterback. I don't care what defense you're playing.
And he's throwing the football.
And he is, yeah, he's throwing the football a lot. So that is who will be under center.
What I'm just loving is his ability to read a situation. And the coaching staff is going to talk about how they want him to do a little bit more, and they're going to continue to challenge him and open up some of the options for him at the line of scrimmage. But I love, you saw those plays last week with the stutter step where he pulled up some of those different situations. Where he's really playing the game and he's very aware of what's happening. Nothing's too big for him. He's not in the moment and shell shocked by anything. He's actually seeing the game. It feels like it's slower for him than most young quarterbacks that you see.
And I've talked to some of his offensive linemen are saying he is recognizing things a lot more than maybe a redshirt freshman should. So that's a good sign for the Bison. All right, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we'll go back out to Delaware and we'll catch up with the guys that will be on the call. That's still to come here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back inside Delaware Stadium in Newark, Delaware, where North Dakota State and Delaware will do battle about 25 minutes from right now. Brian Sean, Lee Timmerman, field side. North Dakota State has just left the field. They've gone into the locker room for their final preparations in a game that, we're getting closer and closer to conference play, and games are ramping up game after game. They're starting to matter now as we have a top 20 matchup.
And I think it's exciting how this schedule ended up unfolding for North Dakota State. You had the game at Target Field, all the hoopla surrounding that against an opponent that's a non-scholarship opponent. We kind of figured how that was going to go. North Dakota, a better challenge. This weekend, a better challenge on the road. And then it all kind of caps off with non-conference play, taking on a top 5 Big Sky favorite in UC Davis next Saturday at the Fargo Dome. So this will be a good test to see how North Dakota State has progressed here throughout the first couple of weeks of the season.
Well, and Delaware's happy to have the Bison here. Anytime you have an opportunity to bring the #1 team in the nation into your home turf, that's not an easy thing to do, something obviously the schedule makers did a few years ago, and it worked out that way.
We are learning a little bit about an injury bug for both teams. For North Dakota State, James Hendricks will sit today, as will Dimitri Williams, which is a late show up on that injury list. But on the other side of things, number 33, Johnny Buchanan, and DeJuan Lee, the leading tackler and the leading rusher for the Blue Hens, they are on the shelf today as well.
Losing Lee, I think, really hurts the dynamic ability of the offense for Delaware. That's going to be a challenge, I think, for them to overcome, because he's an electric player, and the Bison coaching staff thought very highly of him. And Buchanan was a young player himself stepping into a starting role. This entire linebacking core, it's their first year starting. So now you have to move another guy from the depth chart, and that's an important position when you're playing against North Dakota State when you're trying to clog up the A and B gaps.
Hendricks for the Bison practiced some this week, but they're holding him back today.
Yeah, James is here. He traveled with the team, and what Coach Braun said is, hey, we just have another assistant coach. We know that from being around the program long enough to know that when James Hendricks is involved, he's teaching whether he has a helmet on or not.
And the running back, Dimitri Williams, is out for North Dakota State, which I think means a lot of Adam Cofield for the Bison today to do the backup job at running back, and we'll see if he gets some big hitters today. Let's get into our keys to the football game as North Dakota State and Delaware get ready for battle. The first key is ID the key, Lee, and that means that defenses have been trying to fool North Dakota State, their young quarterback and their veteran offensive line all season long. Different fronts mean different keys, and North Dakota State will get tested again.
They certainly will. One of the things that I think if you take a young quarterback and you want to try and emphasize what he needs to do, and he needs to set protections, meaning talk with the offensive line, communicate what he sees, and then slide the line toward the side where the most numbers are. That is the protection. So that'll be one of the things that he has to do that is important for him. And Trey and the Randy Hedberg and everybody knows that's one of the more difficult things for a young quarterback to do is help your offensive line against those multiple fronts.
Defensively, North Dakota State could see some big plays today because the Blue Hens do like to dial up some big things. In fact, a week ago, Delaware had 8 plays that went 20 or more yards, including a 66-yard hookup from Pat Kehoe to Chichi Armachi. I don't want you to say the name Chichi Armachi a lot today, but he's pretty special.
Well, I'm glad that I'm saying Chi-Chi instead of his regular name that is 17 letters long. They call him Chi-Chi because you don't want to call him what his regular name is because it's about 6 syllables. But that was really the play that got Delaware going last week offensively. They didn't score for the first 2.5 quarters of the football game, and then that was a play that kind of got them in rhythm a little bit. And if you're Dawson Weber, starting today at safety for James Hendricks, you got to make sure you read your keys right and not let one of those receivers get behind you in that big play. Make this Delaware offense earn every yard and drive down the field on you. We've seen how challenging that can be to do against the Bison defense over the years.
And finally, our third key is that North Dakota State needs to come up with some sacks today. The Bison only have 2 sacks in 2019. Justice Kelly has 1. Matt Biegler and Derek Tuska each share a sack. It'll be important to get after the quarterback, but that's not so easy today.
No, it isn't, because there's 4 or 5 starters back on that offensive line, but one of the guys and one of the returning starters is playing center. That's Mariel Farinella, and that's a guy that the Bison believe they can pick on. He is the center. They'll try to cross his face, do some different things, make that center move, because the key for any defense is to put, or offense I should say, is to put a defensive player in conflict. So the defense wants to put the offensive player in conflict. They think they can get at the center a little bit with some twists and some movement and get across his face. He doesn't move or hand people off all that well.
Those are our keys to the football game. The game itself getting closer between Delaware and North Dakota State. When we come back, we visit with the head coach of the Bison, Matt Entz. We'll do that and more. Our pregame show rolls on from Delaware.
Go Bison!
Delaware to come, the end of our national anthem, and we'll listen in on that. The first true road game for North Dakota State as the Delaware band plays our national anthem. It is time now for Herdline News, and an exciting week today marks just the 6th time in program history that North Dakota State is playing a game here on the East Coast. The Bison came out here 3 times in the 1930s. Think about what a bus ride that must have been in the dirty 30s. They played Army and George Washington out here this way in 1932. George Washington again in 1937. In 1981, the Bison traveled to Shippensburg, Pennsylvania for the D2 semis. And in 2006, NDSU beat Georgia Southern 34-14 in that 10-1 transition season. Delaware is fresh off celebrating its 700th program victory, making the Blue Hens just the 7th FCS program to reach that milestone when they beat Rhode Island in overtime last week. Comparing apples to apples, North Dakota State has 727 program victories, making Delaware and NDSU the only 2 non-Ivy League schools to reach the 700 club. Ben Ellefson of North Dakota State is in a pretty good club. The Bison tight end has been named to the 2019 All-State AFCA Good Works team for outstanding work on campus and in the community. Ellefson is one of 22 players in the country. He'll be honored at halftime of this year's Sugar Bowl. NDSU right guard Zach Johnson has won the Missouri Valley Conference Offensive Lineman of the Week. He had 12 knockdowns last week against North Dakota and graded out at 98%. The Bison ran for 266 yards in the blowout win last week. Like always, the Bison will rely on that big NDSU offensive line, which has been so good for the Bison this week. In fact, that's how we started our conversation with Bison head coach Matt Entz. I had a chance to catch up with him and ask him about the offensive line. Matt, your offensive line has been so good this year. You would expect that once again today.
Well, it's a big challenge that we've talked about all week long is, there's not a position group in our program that exemplifies who we want to be as a program than the Rams or the offensive line. And so each week we're going to continue to challenge those guys to establish a line of scrimmage, to enable us to run the football, because they're a critical part in the protection scheme, time of possession, conversions on third down. If we can do like a week ago and have a bunch of third and shorts, it can be a good day. And so I'm excited about where they've had an excellent week of practice and look forward to seeing those guys get out and compete.
Obviously, when you look at last year's game, a big storyline, which everybody is talking about, is the fast start. You not only started fast on defense, you started fast on offense, and that too, I would assume, would be a key again today.
Well, any game, as long offensively, went down, scored a touchdown, created, I think the first play from scrimmage, had a pick six, and within 3 minutes of the game, it was 14-0. So, I can't necessarily guarantee we're going to start like that today, but, getting out there on offense and getting some first downs and getting a rhythm of what we're doing offensively, defensively, getting a 3-and-out early, being great on special teams, those things early in the game enable you to win in the fourth quarter.
This is the first true road trip of the year for your football team. Flew in last night. It was an early morning for you guys this morning, a little bit earlier than you're used to. Talk about the routine today.
Well, we tried to keep it as similar as we can. Of course, everything got bumped up a little bit because of the earlier start. We did all our special teams meetings last night so we could allow our players maybe to catch another half hour of sleep this morning. But from my angle and from the rest of our program, it's really just another road trip and status quo. Our schedule is very similar to what it's been over the course of the last 5-6 years.
Delaware is a top 20 team that we talked about last year's game. They'll come out hungry, but then again, everybody comes out hungry for you.
You're exactly right. The one thing you'll find, and you've probably heard, I worry more about us than I do the opponent. Now, we got to stop them, and we got to be able to move the football and play great on special teams, but I know in my mind that we'll be the first ones to cause ourselves issues. So I got to worry about the execution of the Bison right now.
Matt, good luck today.
Thank you.
North Dakota State and Delaware about 15 minutes away as we get ready for Bison football coming up all across the NBC network. More of our pregame show. We'll go upstairs next.
Oh, 6 minutes and 25 seconds on our Coors Light countdown clock before we get you back out to Delaware and kickoff between the Bison and the Fightin' Blue Hens. And let's talk about our Bobcat heavy lifting player. And this week we've decided to go with Derek Tuska. Now, normally Kyle would be here and Kyle would say, hey, here's why I like Derek Tuska. But Kyle is not here. So
Kyle likes Derek Tuska a lot, though.
He does like Derek Tuska.
That was one of his players to watch for the entire season at the beginning of the year, and for good reason. He's a leader for this Bison defense.
And so the reasons that we've picked Derek Tuska for this is because Kehoe is a little bit, the Delaware quarterback, Pat Kehoe, is a little bit more mobile this year. And so Bison defensive front is going to have to keep him contained, and that's going to be something that, everybody, including the defensive ends and defensive line and linebackers, everybody's going to have to do that. But we've picked on Derek here.
Well, I think one of the biggest parts of this is really creating that pressure on Kehoe. If there's anything I've learned from talking to these Bison football players over the last 9 seasons and in talking with Kyle this year, they take a lot of pride in what they do, and I guarantee you this Bison defense is well aware of all of the stats that they generated last year against the Delaware offense, and they want to make sure that they match, if not beat, their performance last year with this year's.
Final note there is lead by example. This is the first true road game, and that defensive line group is pretty young, so they're looking to some senior leadership, and that is what Derek Tuska provides, and that is why he has been picked as our Bobcat heavy lifting report player for this week. And now Kyle cannot do that because I have stolen his guy.
Well, there's other games that Derek Tuska will need. What are these rules you're writing?
I'm just making them up as we go along, Beth. That's how we do it here. We are going to step aside. We'll get our final thoughts as we get set for football here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show.
Less than 2 minutes to go on our Coors Light countdown clock before we get you out to Delaware for the Bison and the Fightin' Blue Hens. Let's get the final thoughts of our crew, the guys on the call. We start with Brian Shawn and Lee Timmerman.
My final thought is to see how the safety situation works for North Dakota State. Dawson Weber, a young man out of California, getting his first career start without James Hendricks in the lineup tonight. How does he handle that against a Delaware attack that scored a lot of points in the second half to get the victory over Rhode Island?
My final thought will stay on the defensive side of the ball as well, and the Bison want to try and disguise some of their pressures or their blitz packages. Maybe show some pressure on this side and then come from the other side, all designed to try to get Kehoe, the quarterback, uncomfortable as possible, move his feet, move his eyes. He's prone to mistakes. Remember the first throw he had last year? Pick 6.
Yeah, for me, the last time Delaware and North Dakota State played, the Blue Hens were behind 14-0 before they ran their second play. I think a fast start is absolutely crucial for Delaware today. In fact, not only is it crucial, they need it to happen. I think the first 8 minutes in this football game tell the entire story to the football game.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Beth, one last thing here.
I'm just really excited to see what Trey Lance is able to do on the road, continuing to maintain his composure and lead this Bison offense once again.
Yeah, Trey has been something else in the first 2 starts of his career with NDSU. See if he can keep managing to hit those tight ends. That's going to be a problem for
Well,
him.
and I'm excited to see who else he can hit as well. He's really spread it out.
9 different guys last year.
9 different
last
guys. That's a
9 different
spectacular
receivers.
stat to have. I kind of want to see the running backs get a little bit more involved in that passing game.
And there could be some newer running backs with Dimitri Williams not playing today. We could see a little bit more Ty Brooks, a little more Sabian Clark.
Lots to come.
So much to come. We send you out to Delaware. Thank you so much for joining us on the pregame show.